Ed Greer. Today I have with me two guests, Mr. Herb Snowden and Mr. William Poole. Thanks, fellas.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Ed, for inviting me.
Kind of felt, gentlemen, that we would want to talk about police-community relations as it relates to Massillon. We know what's been going on around the country with the shootings of black men, and also now black men are starting to retaliate and shoot police officers. We had 5 Dallas police officers that were killed down in Texas, and we had several that were killed down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We've been fortunate here so far that we haven't had that problem, and I think that we certainly don't want that problem. And I think we need to talk about ways that what we can do as black men in this community to see that it doesn't happen here. So I want to open it up. I know, Herb, you lived in Detroit for a long time, and I know you've probably seen a lot of things up there. And maybe we'll start with you and give us some thoughts in terms of what you witnessed up there in Detroit, Michigan.
Well, Detroit is a large city, and at one time, Detroit was the murder capital of the world. A lot of gangs up there, people making deals with drugs and things. The police are not in touch with the communities up there. They just go in, do what they have to do, and leave. These policemen, the towns need to have town meetings with these police officers that patrol the certain neighborhoods. Should let the officers get acquainted with the residents, tell them what's required, ask them what problems they're having, and how they can help rectify those problems. And I think that's what needs to happen all over the United States.
Very, very good. Did that start to happen in Detroit later on then?
No, it didn't.
Okay.
I think it got worse, if
Okay.
anything.
Okay.
I guess it started with the mayor, when the mayors were in office, people that were working under them, and you got some good policemen, you have some bad policemen. The bad policemen were making it rough for everybody. I had a friend that was a vice policeman. He saw 3 of his buddies do some corrupt stuff, and these police officers threatened him and his family. And 3 weeks later, he had to retire and he left the city. And that's sad when policemen threaten another policeman. That's supposed to be a fraternity. These are your brothers. But these guys threatened this man and his family, and my friend had to leave the city.
Mm-hmm. So by the 30 years up there, then what you're saying, you didn't really see a whole lot of change for the better in
There was
terms of
no improvement.
police-community relationships?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Bill, you served here for 25 years, right, as a Massillon police officer?
Right.
And I know I served with you for probably a little bit of that time, maybe 10 years or so. So in your experience as a police officer, we're having to work the beat and doing just a little bit of everything in a small department like Massillon. What do you feel needs to be done here in order to improve the relationship between the police and the minority community?
Well, myself, I've been away from police work I've been retired here for 23 years now, but I know being and having been around the community, I see a need for our city officials probably, or someone in that capacity to address the problem of mental health. That is one of the biggest reasons we have a lot of the problems that we have in and around the country at this time. I know you talk about Black Lives Matter. Well, That really, I think that it was started somewhat, I believe, to address and let people know that, our lives matter as well as white people's lives matter. I know that we don't have a lot of it around in this community, but in other communities where the officers will stop blacks just for any little thing like a headlight or a tail light, and these things shouldn't be, and sometimes they escalate into something much more serious than just the tail light itself. You take, for instance, the shooting that took place in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. If it would not have been for the audio and video, who knows? Maybe this might not have been brought to everyone's attention. This gentleman's or this guy's life being taken away from him. I feel that I watched the video, and I feel like when you have two maybe 200-pound individuals on top of a person, I didn't think that pulling a weapon was necessary, in my opinion. I think that the owner of the store, his video showed that on his cell phone or however he took it, and the incident involving this gentleman, this guy in Minneapolis. I mean, not
St.
Minneapolis,
Paul,
but
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Him being his life being taken just because he was trying to explain or tell the officer that he had a consent or a right to carry, bear arm, carry a weapon, and his life was taken. These things should never happen, but they do. So, but I think that in that case, the officer himself, from the video, and he was just afraid. In my opinion, there was some fear in his stopping the person, the guy, and I think that was just for a headlight or a tail light.
Tail light. Do you feel, Bill, then that the video cameras that some departments wear, you think that should happen all over the country, where you have a video camera that actually videotapes a stop? When you stop a citizen, then you turn that video camera on so that you have a complete record of what actually happened.
Oh, most definitely. That way it helps. It protects the officer who is making the arrest or who is making the stop, and also the person who is being stopped. That way you have a full account of what is taking place. I know back when I was working, a lot of the officers and even myself, we carried what you call a pocket recorder in our pocket just to protect ourselves when we were making a stop or making an arrest,
Right.
So that the individual that we were stopping wouldn't say or that we were making any type of, if it was a female, that you were making some type of advancements toward her, or if it was just a general arrest. We used our pocket cell phone. I mean recorders for that purpose.
Right. Now, do you feel like that I know you were on for about 25 years. I know when I was on back in the 60s and the 70s, we used to go over to the boys club and play basketball with the kids. In fact, we even sponsored a basketball team in the league over there. And I even went around to, in my uniform, would go to Franklin School, would go over to Emerson, even went to the high school a couple times talking to the kids, just to try to get familiar with some of the kids, especially in the minority community who had maybe hadn't been around a police officer, really didn't know how to respond or what. And the little bit that I did, I know a couple years later when I was with the city in another capacity, a young man came up to me. I was downtown at a restaurant. He says, "I remember you when you came over to Franklin School." So do you think things like that might help, where they get to know a police officer personally, so they know that this guy is not out to hurt them, but to help and protect them?
Oh, most definitely. I'm a strong believer in community policing.
Okay,
Having or working in policing an area that you live in, it has great value in it. I think that it should happen in other communities too. I think that's one of the fortunate things that we have around in this community of Massillon, Canton, in this area of Stark County, that there is a lot of community policing. I think you have officers that'll stop and make conversation with the people that they're serving and protecting in the community. And in that community policing, I think that you gather a lot of information sometimes that you normally wouldn't get, because
I agree.
there are times when you, by just stopping and talking to someone, they tell you or give you some information, and not knowing that they're giving you the information, but they give you information maybe involving some type of crime or incident that may have occurred there in that time period.
Right.
So community policing is a great tool, and also officers staying in the community that they're serving, they having lived in that community. That's what I'm trying to say is, when you live in the community and you have more respect and for the people that you're serving.
Right. I would agree with that. Herb, being that you had worked in Detroit for probably 30 years, had you ever been confronted with any police situation during that 30 years or not?
No.
Okay, all right. But you've seen some of your friends and buddies that might have been stopped, and it sometimes didn't always turn out in a pleasant fashion, right?
No, it didn't.
Okay. So in your opinion, since you've been back here in Mass, how long have you been back here now?
19 years.
19 years, okay. So there's quite a contrast between Massillon, Ohio and Detroit,
Yes, it
Michigan,
is.
right?
Yes, it is.
But what would be, Bill talked about community policing. What would be some of your thoughts in terms of what we can do as black men, as leaders in this community, to help out in any way that we can? What would be maybe some of your suggestions that you might think that would be beneficial to our young people?
We probably need a forum, a town hall meeting
Okay,
with the black youth,
okay,
and explain to them that there's an epidemic out where the policemen are killing black youth. We need to educate them and tell them that whatever the policemen tell them to do, do it.
okay,
For some reason, the policemen seem to be afraid of the black youth. Today's black youth, they are different. But majority of the black youth, we haven't done anything to make the policemen afraid of us. We haven't done anything.
right,
And I think that these police academies need to have a different curriculum in how they train these officers.
in other words,
Because
more
time-
training for
Yes.
police officers,
Because times
okay,
have changed.
okay,
And they need to understand what's reasonable force and what's not reasonable force. This seems to be the problem. And I can understand policemen's job is dangerous. They have to make decisions just like that because their lives depend on that. And, I feel sorry for these families that have husbands and fathers that are policemen that have died or been shot. Nobody deserves to be shot. I don't care what the situation is, but there seems to be a culture out there now that these people are tired of being abused, and what they're doing is not going to solve the situation. And like I said, I think these officers need to go in these neighborhoods, have a town hall meeting, and ask what are the problems, and just come together and see what they can do to get together and calm these neighborhoods, because things are not getting any better, they're getting worse.
Well, I think that's a wonderful idea. How do you feel about that, Bill, in terms of the community meetings with between the police, maybe clergy, community members, young people, in a setting where we could all sit down and talk about what Herb was just mentioning there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've always thought that, in which a lot of times, policemen don't think that these civil review boards or citizen review boards are a tool that can be utilized in the communities, but in some respect, they serve their purpose.
Right. I would agree.
And I think that, like Herb said, it needs to be some kind of a forum where you can talk with the kids or talk with the youth in the community to find out some of the things that are on their mind.
Right.
That they don't agree or don't think is right. But I will say, I think that when you have a department like we have, I mean, one or two officers can more or less tear the whole department's image down. So I think that and the officers need to police themselves too a little bit too.
Well, I think you're right there, Bill, that maybe what you and Herb are saying, that maybe we can hopefully establish a community dialogue, and I'll certainly do whatever I can to try to set that up, where we could be a part of a dialogue between the police, the clergy, the community, so we could just sit down over a cup of coffee or a soda and just talk about the problem. And hopefully out of that, maybe we can come to some kind of consensus where we could all have a better understanding of what the police do, what the community should be doing, so that hopefully we can get to a place where we can all feel good about it. I'm now, as you guys well know, and I know, Bill, you've been involved with it too, trying to recruit young black men and women to become police officers. And for one reason or another, a lot of them because of that peer pressure, I don't want to be a police officer because what is my buddy going to think about me? Or what is my sister going to think about me? But I think that we got to keep working to say this is an honorable profession. You were in it, I was in it, and we were able to hopefully, do some good in the community, I feel. But I think that we got to keep working to let these young black men and women know that this is an honorable profession. And if you go in there and with the proper training, you can treat people like you want to be treated, because that was one of the things that was told to me by Captain George Hardesty, somebody you well know too, Bill,
Yes.
who's going on now, but I never forgot what he told me. Always treat people like you want to be treated, and that kept me in pretty good stead. So I think maybe one of the goals of this session, if we can all go from this point and say, look, we need to try to recruit, because with Kirby Brown leaving, and I understand he's leaving next month, there won't be another African American on the department. So I think that's one thing that maybe we can do to not only help the police department, but help the community as a whole to try to recruit young black men and women to become police officers.
And there again, see, I don't feel that the city administration is doing enough in that respect of trying to recruit black police officers. We have a low, or don't have as many as we had back in the 60s and the 70s on our department at this time. And I'll say that I don't know if you've traveled Walnut Road, but there's a sign that a lady put up, "Blue Lives Matter." But now the officers, I think the police department have gotten involved, which is a good thing. Wanting to, they put a more professional sign up, whereas all lives matter, and their police logo and everything is up there. So I think that in some respect they're trying. The lodge, I believe I probably put it up as, or the police department, I don't know, but it serves a good purpose.
Right. Okay, well, I think that the mayor has established a diversity committee of which you and I are a part, and hopefully we can get some things going there that maybe with the help of some of the clergy. I know they have a representative there from the police department, Stark State, and other entities around the city. So hopefully we can get something going there so that we can hopefully in the future get some minorities involved in the police department. Herb, any final word there that you'd like to say?
I just hope that we can get the administration to get these policemen to come together, go to the different neighborhoods and learn about the people that live there, so the people will not be afraid of them, and so the police will not be afraid of them, and the neighborhood not afraid of the police. But we need to have a common goal. Everybody needs to come together, because things are not good here in this city or any of these other cities, and this needs to be addressed, and very, very soon. It needs to be addressed very soon.
Bill, any final thoughts?
Well, yeah, that's my sentiments too. I think that what Herb is saying, as far as the community as well as the city administration and all, and police department should figure or come together and figure out some way we can keep abreast and keep things from happening like they're happening all over the country. And I think we'll be moving in the right direction.
Okay, well, I'll certainly try to, if possible, be the conduit to try to get that together, try to set that meeting up in the near future with you two gentlemen and the police department and others in the community who might want to be a part of this, so that we can keep this thing going in the right direction. Again, thanks, Bill, Herb, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate your time and appreciate your expertise.